Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kyla from HXGN TV. Today we'll be chatting about how to adopt technology to solve industry's most complex challenges, specifically within the realm of product portfolios. Joining us today are Ronnie Stephens, he's the manager of PM Systems and Tools at Williams, and Garrett Fultz, he's the senior director at FTI Consulting. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you here. So first, let's start with you, Ronnie. Give us some background about Williams. How big are you and what do you do?
Sure. Williams is one of the largest premier natural gas infrastructure providers in North America. We currently process about 30% of the U.S.'s natural gas, and we have a little over 5,000 employees. Our headquarters are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we also have major offices in Houston, Salt Lake City, and Pittsburgh.
So tell us a little bit about Williams' approach to innovation and technology.
So our approach has changed a bit over the last few years. I would say 10 years ago, we were out looking for software that we could come in and customize and see how we could get it to work within our systems. And what we really changed over the last few years is trying to find software that we could customize versus configure and really focus on our processes.
Okay, so let's get Garrett in here because this is how he came into the picture. Garrett, how does FTI Consulting fit into the process?
Yeah, so we help our customers bridge the gap between the technology and the business process in order to help their people deliver their project portfolios. And so really, it's not just as simple as putting in technology and using it as a magic button to get to the solution, right? It's wrapping around the organizational change management, the business processes, and then ultimately configuring the product to meet the business need. So it's a usable tool for the end users, and they actually want to use it, right?
So you kind of have to zoom out before you zoom in.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what were some of the challenges or maybe pain points that led you to search for solutions other than spreadsheets?
Yeah, one of the things is, we really focused on the motto that a tool doesn't solve a people or a process issue. And so we just had a lot of challenges with consistent processes, standard language around how we execute projects, and even how we trained people in different regions where we operate. And so in doing that in Excel, it allowed people a lot of flexibility that they could, even if we standardize things, that they could change that. So we wanted a little more control, a little more standardization. So that's one of the pain points that we saw.
So talk a little bit about the process of rolling out an enterprise cost management platform across the various operating areas, because that had to be kind of an undertaking.
It did. Right. It's in our approach, and I'll talk a little bit maybe and let Garrett jump in, is one of the things we decided was we wanted to go small first. So we did a pilot study in Houston, which is one of our larger offices, and we tried about 25 projects, started using the product, got a feel for it, what could it do, what could it not do,
Right.
and then we kind of decided how do we want to best implement over the rest of our enterprise. And so I think that certainly helped us, but I would also say what we found is that we had a lot of challenges in our processes and they weren't consistent. So when we went to scale this up in other areas, we said, well, wow, this really won't work there because they do things just a little bit differently. So
Right.
we had to kind of pause and do a lot of work on our processes and just our project management terminology. And again, where Garrett and his team came in to assist us.
Yeah, I think, kind of to the earlier point, right? The three different operating areas really did things their own way. There was kind of a core reporting capability that was required centrally, but how they got to that answer was very different. And so to Ronnie's point, when the AG, the Atlantic Gulf, was using Ecosystem, the pilot, some of the decisions they made weren't necessarily the best for the Northeast or for the West. And so
Right.
trying to then take that and then apply that to the other operating areas kind of required that we put a pause on it and say, all right, let's get those processes right. Let's try to agree and converge on a common way of doing business. And then that enables not only, consistent delivery, but it helps with portability of resources, right? The ability from a resource in the AG to go to the West and support a project elsewhere. And so it helps in more ways than one, right?
Right.
So.
Just kind of streamlining everything,
Yeah.
Well,
right?
absolutely. And I think the other piece that we found as a benefit as we're growing, we're currently have about $4.7 billion in our portfolio. And so we went from executing about $1 billion. And so as we grew, we're adding a lot of new people. So I think not just the portability, but the ease of bringing new people on board when you have standard systems and tools
Right.
certainly was a benefit.
So you're kind of positioned for more growth.
Exactly.
So talking about that, we're talking about measurable benefits or qualitative improvements that you've seen after moving on from Excel in regard to forecasting and managing capital expenditures. So drilling down a little bit more to what really benefited you from doing it.
Yeah, so one of the terms we like to use is called one version of the truth. And so instead of having to go to multiple spreadsheets or depending on who you ask, you might have got a different answer.
Yeah.
We had standard reports that we could run that was pulled from our financial system, from our purchase order system, from our invoicing system. So we tied all those together so you had one repository where I could go and say, here's the key metrics, key pieces of information for a project. So that was certainly very helpful.
And I think one other thing that we were able to do is bring more industry standard practice to the table. So whereas there were things that were being done because that's how they've always been done that way, right? And then we said, well, you know what, let's try to get this standardized in the right way and focus on what the industry is doing as a best practice or a leading practice. And so we were able to infuse a lot of that into the solution as well. And that's not without its own challenges, right? Because it requires the change for those folks as well.
Right.
In terms of adopting not only the new tool, but then, oh wait, we're doing things a little bit differently. That's not how I think about it today.
Kind of a new culture
Exactly.
around the technology. So
yeah.
now, how is your engineering services organization able to deliver more value through all of these processes through technology tools such as Ecosys?
I think the two biggest things are real-time data. So I think before we would have things downloaded to Excel, like we talked about, manipulated. It might get published in a report, stored on a SharePoint site, right, sent around. Now we have people who can access reports live from multiple systems. So having all that data in one repository certainly helps. I think the other thing, as Garrett mentioned, is just having standard language. So when I call something, an earned value or an estimated completion, Garrett's talking about the same thing,
Right.
and we start to look and feel, get the look and feel across different regions, so that as we go across different areas or bring new people on, everything's very consistent. So I think that's been a huge benefit to us.
Kind of easier to move in tandem as opposed
Yes.
to everyone in their own, dancing to their own beat.
Yes.
Exactly. And I would just add one more point to that. We got a lot of leadership buy-in for this latest round where we were improving things. And one of the big drivers in that was a new type of project, really, that one region specifically or operating area specifically was embarking on taking on a new way of managing those. And so because of that, we were able to really quickly adapt Ecosys to fit that type of project.
Right.
And that meant new program level change management and project change management and integrating those two things together and really supporting more and more projects and work orders in the tool. So that was kind of a surprise to a lot of people in terms of getting there at that in that way, I guess is the way I would describe it.
Yeah, essentially what Garrett's talking about is I can go in and start at a project level. I'm in an executive meeting. Someone might ask questions, and I can drill down. Well, let's go down to maybe what we call a franchise level. Maybe let's go down to a sub-project or to a specific asset we're looking at, whereas in the past, that may have been I've got to run multiple reports, right? And you had different audiences, so now we can start high and then drill down to the appropriate level. And like Garrett said, our executives really like that it's all in one place.
So, Ronnie, would you say that this type of software is now being viewed as a strategic tool at Williams?
Absolutely. I think Ecosys and some of our project management tools are certainly strategic. We're an operating company, but we're also an engineering and construction company. So we have the luxury, or sometimes, right, the challenge of we build it, but then we operate it. And so we're always trying to make sure on the front end we're cost effective, but also we want to be able to run assets for 20, 30 years and feeding that back. So certainly.
So going forward, how do you both see the evolution of managing projects performance at Williams? I mean, how do you see this progressing?
So I think for us, it's, so we have the cost management modules today. We really want to integrate, and, as Garrett talked about, other industry standards. So our scheduling integration, so Primavera P6, looking at things like earned value and just even more standard, I'll call it integrated reports. And so that's really kind of our roadmap that we have. And so we're trying to match that with the Ecosys roadmap. And so really look at where there's some synergy there so that they match up, because we don't really want to be trying to do something that's 2 years off,
right,
and vice versa. And so we've spent a lot of time working with their team to say, where do those integrate, what makes sense for us, and we can try to leverage where the tool's going.
Yeah, and I actually think that's something we didn't talk about yet, but last year you were here at Hexagon Live.
Yes.
And that was really one of the big drivers for us in terms of how we adjusted the roadmap and the vision for Ecosys at Williams. And then because of that, we've now made some really good choices to set up the solution to support all of those things that you're talking about, right? So it's no longer that we have to do a lot of rework if we want to add in schedule integration or earn value capabilities or continue to expand and evolve with your projects, right? So it's kind of building on what you learned here last year, and then a year later, we're here kind of presenting how we got there, right? Which is kind of an interesting transformation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, it's not, I know people hear people talking and say, well, they're maybe just making a plug for people to attend the conference. But as an owner, we send people to the conference and we do really want them to get value out of it. And like Garrett said, we were here and we had a few areas where we were kind of thinking about some things, maybe had some challenges. And we said, hey, that's a really cool solution that either another customer came up with or
Right.
that someone was developing. We started working with that and we completely changed, I'll call it our architect, and that's really what we're rolling out this year.
So it's kind of having those conversations.
Yeah,
to
learning
see,
what others are doing. How did you
Right.
handle this? And then just getting the smart people like Garrett in the room to have their
Thanks.
conversations. And then I drink coffee, and then they come ask me. I'm like, that sounds really good. And yeah, so
Let's
that's
do
kind of my
that.
role. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for this conversation,
Yeah, thank
gentlemen.
you.
We
Yeah, no
appreciate it. Again, Ronnie Stephens and Garrett Futz. And of course, if you'd like more information, you go to hexagonppm.com, or you can watch additional videos, episodes at hxgnspotlight.com. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.